Morning business meeting. I see Jessica. You may be the only one I see today. Well, I know Kim's here. Yeah,
Kim's here.
sorry.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I have a couple notifications for you. One of our district court specialists has resigned effective June 30th. So they'll be filling her position. She's going out on a long maternity leave and just not planning on coming back into the workforce. So her position will be filled. And then over in juvenile probation, they'll be filling a juvenile probation counselor position. Cindy Buchanan is retiring in July, so they'll be filling her position.
Okay.
And then request to fill, I have a request to fill from building and plant.
Excuse me,
yeah.
Jennifer, Jessica,
Yeah.
are both of those departments fully employed with the exception of these two retirements?
District court is, I know that, and then juvenile probation does have a couple open probation positions. They've had one open probation position for a little bit of time. They're trying to decide if they want to fill that one or not. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then, so request to fill, so building and planning, their permit specialist coordinator has signed for the nuisance abatement coordinator position. So they would like to fill his position. It's Trevin Bradley, and he's a permit specialist and coordinator.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then also in building and planning, one of their associate planners, Peyton Murphy, has put in her resignation. So they would like to fill her position.
So that means they're down, what, 3 or 4 positions? I can't remember. It seems like they.
I don't have the exact number, but yeah, they're down a few positions. And I know a couple of those positions they weren't planning on filling, but Peyton's they would like to fill.
Okay.
And this is heading into prime contracting season,
Yeah.
right? So it's important to get those permits out.
Start pounding nail season.
Mhm.
Quick question. Commissioner asked, it spurred a thought on me. How many open positions do we have that have been there for like a year? Do we have anything that's just been sitting there for over a year and stuff?
I believe they have a report in budget that has
That would have
those
that.
numbers. I know Tracy
was working on that.
used to have those reports that I would see. So I can check with Kathy to see. Oh,
Yeah.
Tracy's raising her hand actually.
Yep, she is.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Hey there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't get unmuted that's weird. I didn't get brought over. We don't have anything longer than a month. We've closed all of the open positions that we had that we don't think that we're gonna need. Our focus is really with the current permitting and not slowing permits down. Permit activity is kind of maintained and leveled out, but OFM has the holistic list of all the vacate positions.
Yeah. The only thought was if we got positions sitting vacant for over a year, are they really positions anymore? You know? Anyway, I got kind of
agree.
A regular topic of discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got sidetracked a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah, I know Tracy has talked about that before, and I know some departments have closed positions since then. I don't have the exact number on how many we actually have open. And there are some departments like corrections and juvenile, they might have positions that have been open for a while, but those are just harder to fill positions that they're working on filling. But
Yeah.
they also have people leaving, people starting, so there's more turnover.
So in those kinds of situations where the job is still pretty critical, there's a lot of overtime.
There is.
Usually, and that's,
Yeah,
to a certain extent, we can cover with overtime, but if it gets too large,
Yeah.
it's more expensive than it's worth.
yeah, I know.
Plus the
both-
toll on the employees.
For sure, yeah, I know both departments are working to fill those positions. Those just are hard to fill positions right now.
Little bit
And
of the
it's
bullying
not that
off.
our wages are not competitive. It's just the lack of applications
Mhm,
for the
Yep.
most part. Yeah.
Yeah.
correct. And I think overall, I mean, even in some of our easier to fill positions, we're seeing less applicants come through than we were several years ago. So I think it's just the overall job market.
Okay.
Have any other questions for me?
At the end, we have an executive
Yep,
session. How, time wise?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy.
Good morning,
Okay.
Commissioners. Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Manager. Tomorrow you'll have a consent agenda item for the Budget Stabilization Fund that I submitted. It has changes you suggested in the workshop session. And then I also referenced the actual policy on general fund reserve balance instead of actually putting the 8.3% number there. Just in case that ever changes, in the event it changes, then this policy would not have to be amended as well. So I did that.
Okay.
Any questions on that? Okay, and as I mentioned in the last business meeting, we have 2 projects for consideration on the forced federal Title III funds. We have a total of $18,327 to disperse. We had 2 submissions. One is from District 6 requesting $7,000. Both of these were for emergency services of personnel and equipment. But on District 6, their $7,000 includes $1,000 for administrative overhead, which I don't believe qualifies. And then District 3 is requesting the full $18,327. And if I can provide a suggestion, I suggest that we consider allocating $6,000 to District 6 and $12,327 to District 3. And I'd like to get this, it requires us to have a formal public hearing and 45-day comment period. So I'd like to get it on the agenda.
So we're taking that administrative stuff off of the 7 and then putting it over, and they're both for the same purpose,
They're
emergency
both
services.
for the same purpose, emergency services, personnel and equipment.
You have any trouble with that, Commissioner? No.
Okay, and I'll proceed with that. So you'll see something coming forward for a public hearing. I'm continuing to work on the budget for 24 and 25 and reports as needed. And then finally, I had submitted monthly reports to you, and I was just following up to see if there's any questions.
Initial look at that, it actually looked pretty decent. The question I did have on them, because we're, our expenses and everything looked really good. Are we expecting anything abnormal coming up that hasn't been taken care of? I mean, is it what it says, or we know something's coming up here, so it's looking like we're under a little bit?
No, when I looked at it, we're pretty much tracking
Or
with
pretty
last
much
year.
tracking? Okay, good.
And we actually, like you said, we're tracking a little better. I was surprised we're tracking a little better on sales tax than we did last year.
Yeah, that's a
Even
surprise.
though we had 1 month that was down, but we had another month that was higher than expected.
Yeah,
So we're tracking pretty well on that. On our property taxes, both the general fund and the road fund, we're tracking ahead of last year. So things are looking favorable
yeah.
trend wise. So, and then speaking about positions and budget and the impact that has, I also have been trying to show you just a forecast or a snapshot of what our salary budget looks like based upon what we've consumed so far, and trying to forecast out based upon that trend, how much we may see as a positive variance And for the general fund, I'm estimating a little over about $3.3 million, anywhere from 3.6 to 3.3. So that's a combination of vacancies that we're trying to fill, potentially positions that haven't been filled in a while, things like that. So.
It's good. I know when you budget, it's more of an assumption that your FTE is full, right?
Yes.
And then as time goes on and people leave, a natural thing in filling, you get a little bit of buffer. So
Yeah.
3 million, that's a little heftier than I would guess, but that's good.
Well, it's tracking with, it looks like it's tracking with what happened last year as well. So that's why I feel comfortable in forecasting that. And then on the road fund, it's a little over 400,000. So.
Good.
Any other questions?
All looks good.
Okay.
Thank you. We're glad you have grandkids that live up here.
I do what?
We're glad you have grandkids that live up here.
Oh, yes, yes. I am too. I love them.
Meaning we had the opportunity to hire her.
Yeah.
And I know Marin's out sick, so I won't bug anything on her. Maybe I can ask you, because the one question I had for her, and I know we've been taking everything and we had a comment on Tuesday come up on capacity. I know the capacity of the jail is a little over 300, but that's not true capacity because there's some mental issues that take up.
It's the posted capacity because based on the number of cells,
Yeah.
but you subtract all the required single, solitary confinement folks because of the mental illness.
So do you know what the adjusted capacity is?
Well, that depends on the prisoners that show up that have the special needs. So that fluctuates all the time. And it's been creeping back up a little bit, right around 220 to in that
Right
area.
in that area.
So,
Okay, so I just trying to get a handle on that question from Tuesday.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can deal with her. Kim, hi.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Commissioners. Kim Hort, IT Director. I wanted to follow up in regards to the conversation we had last week in regards to business continuity and disaster recovery planning. I reached out to the State Association of Cities and Counties and got some positive feedback from the State Auditor's Office. Commissioner Dahl gave me some good feedback last week as well. And then Clark County is also being asked similar questions from their executive team. So I'm
Good.
building out some resources, and the state auditor gave some good examples of where they recommended doing a business analysis, impact assessment, lengthy title, sorry, and a few other kind of categories before so we can articulate the value and the impact to our department. So good feedback and good support. So I just wanted to give an update on that.
Perfect.
I'm working on contracts. We have a couple of things that are coming due. So I'm working with legal. Previous management had bypassed legal consulting. So there's kind of a couple of extra hoops I'm jumping through, but we'll get through it. And there's still issues with equipment lead time. So the telephone communications project is kind of not hitting the ground running as fast as we were hoping. I'm still pushing to have it completed by the end of July, but with supply chain issues, some of the equipment won't be here until September, but luckily that's not key equipment. So luckily we can get partially deployed and deploy things in phases. I worked with the legal team and the formalized retention group and kind of discuss some training opportunities for subject matter experts and kind of coming up with a strategy of how we can incorporate retention and public records management training. So good conversations. It's kind of a meaty thing to chew on, retention. So it's
so we're still on track for a recommendation by the end of July.
I am doing my best. And then last week, I just wanted to do a shout out to your staff, both Bailey and Kelly, along with Jordan Cole. worked with KLTV and their vendor to do some audio testing, and were able to go live with their newer technology and whatnot. So I just wanted to formally share the good experience. It was a little frustrating. There were some bumps along the way, but the team came together and accomplished great things late last week.
So we get to try that tomorrow. So, okay.
Other than that, I do have a summer help position open, and we are filling that with a local talented individual. So they're starting this Friday. Other than that, that's all I have to report.
Can I go back to, let's go back to the telephone,
Mhm.
the phone system contract a little bit. And I get they're having delays. They don't have the ability to change price or change rates or anything.
I've done a couple of expedited shippings to meet some deadlines. We have the budget capacity with, contingency in there. So I'm definitely trying to find the balance, but
But that's the decision we've made, not,
correct.
there's no penalty, sometimes and it doesn't happen in every contract, and I can't remember this one. We would institute penalties for not performing in a certain time frame.
Mhm. I would have to review the contract. I don't know confidently off the top of my head.
I don't know that they'd be able to speed up shipping issues, but sometimes we found that helpful, that it kept firms on track.
Mhm.
That's all I had.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Any miscellaneous? Were yours burning Thursday? I was at Longview Council, and they were talking about redoing the
Oh,
thing out
yes,
there.
yes.
Yeah.
Actually,
Your name was thrown around quite a bit.
hopefully they were smiling.
Yeah.
I actually did quite a bit of research about 20 years ago and wrote some articles on those early Monticello Convention
Yeah.
delegates. And there are a number of names on that list that have traditionally been listed as signers, but there's no evidence that they actually existed. There's no property deed listings. Most of those old pioneers had donation land claim forms that give a lot of background information, and they're not there.
Yeah.
And I raised the question about it would be nice to actually look at the original signatures, but that's not available either. So there's one person who's listed as the one name that I do remember is a Henry Winslow is listed as a signer, but Henry Windsor, ending in an R, was very much involved in business at Monticello and had mail contracts with the government. And it's a few of those things that kind of, I wish there was a way to verify that.
Yeah.
But,
This is on, J.H. Kelly is offered to refurbish the display. It's over by the library, the train. It's kind of across the deal about, and this relates to when Oregon Territory was divided and we became state of Washington, and the group that came together, and we have a plaque over there memorializing that. And they, J.H. Kelly, very gracious in bringing that up to speed, but Commissioner Weber's name kept coming up because need to run it by Dennis because he knows a lot of that history and make sure we're accurate. So
right.
that's what I'm.
So
Give it that time.
the local pioneers put together 2 conventions. They called them conventions. They were pioneer meetings. And they had some lawyers working with them, and they came up with some fancy documents making the formal request to Congress to divide the state. And they continued to use the name Columbia. They wanted us to be called Columbia Territory. And the first convention was held at Cowlitz Landing, which today we call Toledo.
Oh, okay.
And that was as far up as the boats would go on the Cowlitz River. And so that was a gathering place. And they got really involved in naming counties for this new territory and as sometimes happens with certain politicians, they end up naming things for themselves. And it turned out that most of them were identified with the Whig Party, which was the main party in opposition to the Democrats back in those days. And the guy in Washington, DC, who represented Oregon Territory, was a guy by the name of Joseph Lane. Lane got the county named for him, Lane County. So it wasn't all that unusual, but he picked up on the fact that all these Whigs up north wanted their own territory. And he was a very prominent Democrat. He was the Democratic leader for Oregon. And he engineered, he said, let's give it to him. We don't need him interfering with our electoral successes. So it was that request that generated the legislation to divide. And in February, so that was in 1851, in August, I think. In 1852, they held one in Monticello because nothing had happened. So, and they sent another memorial. They toned it down a little bit, didn't name counties and sent it off. 2 weeks after the Monticello Convention was held, Joseph Lane introduced the legislation back in Washington, D.C. Well, there's no way something from out here could have gotten back in time. So he was responding to the Cowlitz Landing Memorial. By the time the legislation got debated in the House of Representatives, it was February. And by that time, he had received the Monticello Convention, and that was read into the record. And I'm sure it was a clerk that had to try to interpret all those names and got some of the names wrong. So long story, but then history lectures always are.
Yeah. So at one point in time, we were conservative. Executive session, should we take care of that? Okay, we will adjourn for executive session on qualifications of an applicant. Looks like about 5 minutes. We'll be back. Okay, we're back from an executive session. No decisions were made. Jessica.
Jessica Warren, Human Resources again. I would like to ask for approval to start the IT Deputy Director, step 2, which is one step above what the IT Deputy Director would currently start at.
I move we concur with the department's recommendation.
Yeah, we need to vote on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
I also vote aye. There you go.
Thank you.
Great.
I don't see any hands or we have anything else. We can adjourn this meeting. We'll be back at 11.